We're going to talk about one of the fundamentals of following recipes, and that's measuring. It's common particularly in the baking and sweet world. It's definitely important in the savory world as well. You can get away with more without measuring in savory, but trust me, if you're not measuring and following recipes correctly, you will have some problems with your food when it comes to its final plate presentation. There's dry ingredients and there's liquid ingredients. There's weight and there's volume. Okay, you're going to see ounces, and that's going to be dry ingredients such as flour. When you're doing dry ingredient measuring, you're going to use things such as these lovely spoons, teaspoons and tablespoons for dry. You're also going to use cups, half cups, quarter cups, 1/3 cup. That's going to be for dry. And then the scale for dry for weight. Then you see this lovely measuring device here. That's when the liquid comes into play. Liquid measurements are going to be in liquid measuring cups such as this, and it's volume. You don't want to start doing liquid in a quarter cup. You don't want to start doing dry in a liquid measuring cup. They don't convert. It's not precise. If you do a cup of flour in here, it's not going to be the same as a cup of flour in here. This is for liquid. This is for dry. When you do get into some of the refined recipes at high-end restaurants, they like to use the metric scale such as grams. That's a little bit different. Everything's going to be done by weight on a scale in grams. You'll see recipes with both liquid and dry done on a scale in grams. But in the United States, we have our system, which is ounces and cups. There's 4 cups to a quart, 4 quarts to a gallon, and so on. Here's another important thing about doing volume. You want to go to the line, so you see right here, half cup, which is 4 ounces. But when you're measuring, it's really important that you're actually at eye level and you're eyeing it so that it gets to that line. If you're standing above it and looking down, perception-wise, it may not always measure correctly. So there's a couple of things you can do. If you're tall like me, you don't want to hold it up like this. It's not going to work because it's not level in your hand. No matter how level you think it is, it's not level. So you can either elevate it on some sort of device so it's at eye level, or in my case, this is why I have a bad back, you spend a lot of time crouched down. But as I'm pouring, you want to get it to the line. But the beauty is, if you're over, you can add a little bit back. But you always want to be at the level of the line you're trying to achieve with volume. You don't want to be looking down on it because you might be below, you might be above. It's important that you're accurate in measuring, especially in the sweet world. So we've talked about dry ingredients need to be measured in weight, liquid in volume. And we talked about using your liquid measuring vessels for liquid, your cups and your spoons for dry. But we still have this scale to discuss. Whether you're working in ounces or grams or weight, this is what you're going to want to go to. Let's turn it on real quick. So we're looking at the scale, and say you're working on some sort of baking recipe that calls for flour in ounces. We're on grams right now. You're going to hit your unit button. Now, keep in mind, not all scales are going to be designed like this. This is a really nice digital scale. You can find it at kitchen supply store or some of the higher end retail stores out there. There's also the old school analog with the dial. One of the things that's really important when using a scale, when you're measuring, is understanding what they call taring, or tare, T-A-R-E. So the scale is reading 0, it's on ounces. I need 4 ounces of flour right now. So what I'm going to do is find a vessel, because you don't want to just dump your ingredient onto the plate. It's going to make a mess. Whether it's digital or analog, you don't want to do that. You want to work clean, you want to work organized, and if you measure 4 ounces on this surface, it's not all going to be 4 ounces into the recipe. So as you can see right here, it's gone up to 2.4 ounces. Then we have a tare button right here above the unit button, and we're at 0. So now we're compensating the weight. This is a common mistake for young cooks in kitchens. People can do it at home. A chef will do it when they're really tired after a long week, but I need 4 ounces. So now I'm going to get 4 ounces into a vessel so I can add it to the recipe. Careful not to make a mess. Wow, 4 ounces was a lot more than So we're at 2.5, 3.2, 3.3, 3.6, 4 ounces. So these are some really important steps in using a digital scale that most people don't think about. If you're not familiar with the digital scale, that's okay. You can use analog. Lots of chefs are working away from the cups and spoons into the gram world, into the metric systems, because it creates uniform recipes throughout. You can just use one item to measure everything. So you can do this in grams and ounces. But when you're using a digital scale or an analog scale, always keep in mind keeping the surface clean so that it gives you an accurate reading. Using some sort of vessel for the ingredient you're measuring and recalibrating your scale to 0 so that you get an accurate measurement. All these steps are really important when using measuring and cooking, because if you're not following these steps correctly, it'll be just as inaccurate as if you were using liquid measuring for dry or dry measuring for liquid. Essentially, it would be doing the same thing. So whether you're measuring by weight or by volume, it's extremely important that you're using the correct tools so that you have the correct end result in your food. And that, folks, is how important measuring is when you're cooking.